Let us know when you guys are ready.
And then we're done, probably.
All right.
All right, fine.
We're ready.
Oh, good.
Well, it's a great message.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. Something I thought when you were about halfway through the message was, how did you know this is where you wanted to go this week? At what point were you like, this is where we're going this week?
Wow. Okay, so a number of people have said good message, and I always appreciate that. But I really want to say I ran across most of the ideas for this message from two different points. One was the Bible Project. Their series on the character of God is ridiculously good, and I've been listening to that for the past many months. So that's sort of been stewing in my mind for a while. And then this week, I'd loaned out this book by Brennan Manning, Ruthless Trust, and someone brought it back to me. So it was sitting on my desk, and I just opened it, having forgotten that I've already read this book, and I started to find some things that I had underlined or put exclamation points. And so I just started reading it and was just struck by the idea that we as Christians are called to trust God. And to do so, He is trustworthy. Couple that with the report from Ravi Zacharias that dropped this last week, or I guess it's 2 weeks now, talking about all of the allegations having been proven true and everything that's happening there. I'm like, we are going to fall apart as in a church if we trust leaders more than we trust God and His Son Jesus. So we need to do a work of undergirding our trust in God, not people like me.
That's really good. And that whole thing was fresh on my mind this morning because just before the service began, in a casual conversation with someone else, we were talking about that very thing, the Ravi Zacharias thing, and how difficult it was to wrestle through that for someone so well respected in the church for the great things that he did, but also now to see this stain on his image and how that can really begin to erode our trust in church leadership as a whole and thereby God. So it was a great tie-in and a great way to point us back to Jesus.
Right. A young girl who came up to me right after a service, I'm going to give her a shout out. Her name is Emily, and she's a student at Millikan, been coming for a while. And I just met her today for the first time, and she just wanted to say she's been coming for a while, and I think been in church for a while too. But she says, I've never heard anyone address or talk about the issues of sexual misconduct and all that stuff from the platform like that before. And she just wanted to thank me for doing that. So it's a very weird way to start a sermon. In fact, Joe, I don't recommend it. When you got to put a rated PG-13 or rated R, label on what is about to happen, it makes you feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure. But sometimes the uncomfortable subjects are worth talking about because those can be the things that do drive people away. And even just the acknowledgement of them being an issue is enough to say, wow, yeah, we've never talked about this before.
That's so true. And I think the church can be and maybe should be much more culturally aware of what's happening in the world around us. Of course, could be said about when George Floyd was killed last year, Black Lives Matter, and all of that this last year. Obviously, addressing what's happening with COVID and the people's unwillingness to wear masks, to love their brother or sister, and all of that. We should be able to address some of this stuff. I've shied away from it in years past. I told my wife recently, I think I want to say some things. And I've typically not said stuff about that. It's always been my desire to sort of preach gospel, preach Jesus, preach salvation, and not get into the weeds, so to speak, of sort of cultural application of those things.
Yeah.
And yet I'm learning if we don't get into that stuff, it's almost theoretical. It becomes head knowledge, which can do what to us, Joe? Puff us up, build us up.
Yeah.
And if we don't have transformed lives in the culture around us, what are we doing? And I'm too old now. I'm 51, be 52 this year, to not talk anymore. I want to talk. The problem is I don't know what to say, so I've got a lot of work to do. But
yeah, and that's okay. And I'm a firm believer that the church does have the answers for all of these things. And so we're not always willing to do the work to uncover what the answers are. And maybe we don't know the right way through them to get to the point, but we can always point people to Jesus while acknowledging these things are problems. We don't know how to fix it in the moment, but we can still.
I think that's so true. Let me ask you a question. Do you think some churches and maybe pastors of churches shy away from talking about some of these things because they're afraid they might offend people? And by offend people, I mean like offend like maybe donors to the church, and there's some fear that if I make so and so mad, they'll leave, and the church won't have their offering or tithe anymore. Have you heard of anyone doing?
I don't know if I've heard of that happening, but that's my own external judgment of what it might be that would cause those things sometimes, because you have so many different personalities in the room, and so the easier thing to do is to speak in a way that would not ruffle feathers on either side of any issue. And
that's good.
When that sort of thing occurs, when feathers get ruffled, many times what happens is that a lot of those people who have those wings have big purses too, and when feathers get ruffled, it's really easy to pull out. And so, realistically, on a pragmatic level, maybe this is way off track there, but the church takes money to run, and so out of a sincere intent to continue doing what is necessary for the survival of the church, so to speak, and when I say you, I mean the pastor who would do that sort of thing, not you specifically, but you would decide not to ruffle the feathers, so to speak, to keep the gold flowing into the coffers, which on one hand is maybe born out of a true desire to continue doing the work, but on the other hand is getting to exactly what you were talking about today, trusting in men more than God himself.
Wow, that's real good.
That was a long way around to get there.
Thank you for that, yeah. And I could probably say, with God as my witness, hand on my Bible, I don't know that I've ever not said something because I was afraid to offend givers. And I can say that because I actually don't know who gives money here at the church. So I know you were on staff at the church with us for a while, and you know that to be true, that I don't see any tithe money that comes in. I see totals, I see the monthly or the weekly or whatever, but I don't know any individual who gives money. In fact, it's my assumption that everyone who comes here is the largest giver in this church. And I just operate from that place. So motivation for me to not address certain issues, I've alluded to already, it's my own ignorance. Because I don't feel like I know enough about something, I feel like I can't talk about it. And you know how anxious I am about being perceived as intelligent, and I want people to think I know what I'm talking about. And when I don't know what to say, or when I don't know what's fully happening in a particular issue in the world around us, I'll sometimes just be quiet to learn, to study, and then when I finally feel like I can say something, the moment sort of, like a wicker basket just rolled down the stream. So.
And then it seems too late to address.
Yeah. Anyways, gosh, that's whatever. Yeah. But trusting God instead of men.
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah. And you, as you mentioned earlier, you said to Stacy, you think you have a lot of things to say. You do, actually. And then being able to articulate those in a way that is really, not to puff you up a little bit, but a way God has gifted you is to be able to speak in a way that can ruffle feathers, but also make people like that happening. Yeah. Which is a gift. You can say things that disagree with what somebody else believes, and they don't hate you for it.
Yeah.
Mostly, yeah. And so that's really a gift that you have to be able to do that. And so what a better platform than to be able to use that by.
Sure. I had an elder at my previous church tell me once that God used me, right, to ruffle feathers or rile up religious spirits in other individuals. And it made me weep. It truly did. I mean, I'm not like trying to be hyperbolic in it. I mean, I cried because people didn't like me simply because of me. And yet God had placed inside of me something that made them upset. And it wasn't me personally. I just had this effect on people. Yeah. And so it was a hard thing to sort of live out. I'm not a big spoon. I'm not just about stirring the pot. I know people like that. In fact, I'm talking to one right now.
That's absolutely right.
Joe, you're one of the biggest spoons I know. No, some people do that just intentionally.
Yeah,
We've all
yeah.
been guilty of it, maybe.
Yep.
But for me, it's usually not the case.
Yeah.
Though I think a lot of times God will lead us to controversial statements.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas I will say something because I'm looking for an argument and thrive off of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You would say something out of a sincere question,
Yeah.
like, what about this? And that can be really healing, which, like the person you gave the shout out to earlier said, I've never heard anybody talk about these sorts of things. Sometimes just bringing things out into the open. It's like when I was a kid and my mom used to say, if I scrape my knee, get some air on that. I don't know if that's right or not, but like, don't leave a Band-Aid on that for 4 days straight. Take the Band-Aid off and get some air to it. I don't know if that is really helpful or not.
I think sometimes, yeah.
But our internal wounds, that really can help. Let's get some air on them. And even if we're not putting ointment on it or anything like that, just airing them out a little bit helps us to heal.
Yeah, so let's couple that with the idea that there's a Greek word for the Holy Spirit, and he's called the what?
The breath, the wind.
The pneuma. The wind of God, the air of God. And so, that's so good, Joe. So we should write sermons together is what we should do. But yeah, to allow the wind of God, the breath of God, the Holy Spirit of God to breathe onto a wound internally that no one else can see, that we're hiding from everyone else, and to begin to fix that. Like that feels even good to me now, just saying that.
Yep, me too. And it feels like the Holy Spirit did that today, was breathed on this wound of what are we going to do about trusting respected church leaders who seem to have let us down when they have. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
They've let us down, and we can't dismiss that reality. But opening up about that allows the Holy Spirit to breathe on it.
Right. Yeah, and getting real with it.
Yeah.
Maybe let's not kindly call it sexual immorality and call it what it is, sexual criminality.
Yeah. Abuse.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's real good. Yeah, I have no idea.
I didn't really go anywhere that I planned today with this conversation, but
good.
I think it went to a really great place. And so, yeah, thanks for the work that you put into the message and bringing in the levity in the midst of the heaviness.
Yeah.
Which maybe some people, real quick, just finishing up here, some people might not know what levity means.
Oh, well, I see. Yeah.
What's the meaning of that word?
Just to lift it out of what feels too heavy and thick and whatever, just to make it lighter, feel a little more light. I can't think of
it's like putting on a backpack and then taking some of the heavy boots out of it.
Yeah.
You took some of the boots out of it.
Okay, yeah, and laughter can do that.
Yeah.
Because you can get a bit chewy, to use that metaphor, like you're really trying to eat something that's hard and whatever. And just make it a little softer, make it a little more palatable, make it a little easier. That's real good. Yeah, so levity, hopefully, laughter as levity can go a long way.
Yep,
in a
absolutely.
sermon, so.
And help us stay engaged as we get distracted when we're like, whoa, this is a heavy thing to talk about.
It is.
And start thinking about different things. So,
Yeah.
great job. Thanks,
Thanks, bro. Love you, man.
Love you too.